This isn't just a story to tell around a campfire. It is an encounter that would change my understanding of what it means to truly be afraid. It was a stark awakening from the naive bubble I had lived in, a chilling reminder that the world is far more complex and mysterious than I had ever imagined. I was just a few months shy of my 18th birthday, teetering on the edge of adulthood with all its looming responsibilities and freedoms, when I found myself in the middle of an experience that would forever blur the lines between reality and the horror movie. Growing up, my grandma was sort of my first-hand intro to how tricky getting old can be, especially when your mind starts playing tricks on you. She had her good days and her not-so-good ones, with her memories sometimes getting all jumbled up or just plain made up. Seeing her go through all that really hit me hard, and somewhere along the line, I figured maybe I could do something about it. That's how I ended up with this crazy idea of becoming a social worker. I thought, hey, if I could help someone like Grandma, maybe it wouldn't feel so hopeless, you know? Little did I know I was about to step into a whole different ballgame. So this one night, I took a gig as a nighttime companion for an elderly man named Harold, who was suffering from severe episodes of night terrors and hallucinations due to his advanced age and declining mental health. His niece, Jenna, who was in her mid-30s and worked night shifts as a nurse, was desperate for someone to keep an eye on her uncle during the nights. Given my background and family history, I felt equipped for the task. However, nothing could have braced me for the ordeal that was to unfold on my very first and unequivocally last night at Harold's home. Jenna briefed me about Harold's condition before she left for her shift. She mentioned his tendency to see things and people that weren't there, but sometimes he could understand that he's just imagining. Also, I was warned that he could become quite agitated, but I reassured her of my capabilities and watched her leave with a hint of unease that I couldn't shake off. Harold, with his frail frame and hair as thin and white as spider silk, barely acknowledged me beyond that fragile nod. It was like he was looking right through me, his eyes clouded with a mix of confusion and a distant kind of sadness that seemed to weigh heavily on him. Words weren't his thing, it seemed, or maybe he just didn't have much left to say. Standing there, in that dimly lit living room that smelled faintly of old books and time, I couldn't help but wonder what thoughts were chasing each other around in his head. Was he trying to piece together who I was, or was he lost in some tangled memory from his past? Either way, Harold didn't give much away, leaving me to take steps into what was supposed to be just another job. Following Jenna's instructions, I made myself comfortable in the sparsely furnished living room, where the only light came from an old lamp and the glow of a television set stuck on a channel playing reruns of classic sitcoms. The volume was low, just enough to fill the eerie silence without disturbing Harold's rest upstairs. An hour or so had passed when I first heard it, the sound of shuffling footsteps above me. I hesitated for a moment, not wanting to jump at every little sound, but the caregiver in me kicked in. I figured it wouldn't hurt to check on Harold, just to be safe. When I was about to stand up, I heard the door shutting. Maybe he had just taken a quick trip to the bathroom? With that thought, I shrugged off the unease and continued watching TV. It wasn't long before the quiet of the night was shattered again, this time by a blood-curdling scream that shocked me. I rushed upstairs to find Harold standing in the hallway, his eyes wide with terror. Seemed that he screamed at an unseen assailant. It took every ounce of calm I could muster to soothe him, convincing him that he was safe and that there was nobody there. With great difficulty, I managed to lead him back to his room, his body trembling with fear. "Try to rest," I encouraged. I waited until his breathing steadied a bit, the lines of terror on his face slowly relaxing as my reassurances began to take effect. Though his body still held a slight tremor, it was clear the immediate panic had subsided. I allowed myself to relax back into the couch downstairs. However, peace was short-lived. The house seemed to come alive with unsettling noises, whispers that seemed to emanate from the walls. The sound of something heavy being dragged across the floorboards above, and the eerie creak of a door slowly swinging on its hinges. My mind raced with panic, but I reminded myself that old houses are prone to making strange noises. Around 2 a.m., a sudden, sharp banging from the kitchen snapped me out of my daze. Heart pounding, I ventured toward the source of the noise, only to find the back door flapping wildly against its frame, seemingly unlatched. I wondered if it had been left open accidentally, or if Harold had ventured outside. Decided to quickly close the door, but suddenly saw Harold standing in the doorway. A kitchen knife was in his shaky hand, his eyes filled with a mix of confusion and unspoken terror. He demanded to know who I was, his voice barely above a whisper but laced with fear. Am I his imaginary person? Or what is going on here? I tried to pierce through the fog of his confusion with soothing words. Harold, it's me, I said gently, my voice steady despite the pounding of my heart. I took a cautious step forward, trying to convey safety and familiarity through my tone and posture, hoping to rekindle some flicker of recognition in his clouded eyes. But it was as if he was trapped in a different reality, one where I was a stranger, an intruder, rather than a caretaker. The confusion in his gaze morphed into suspicion, and his grip on the knife tightened slightly. It was heartbreaking and terrifying in equal measure to see him so lost, so detached from the world that we shared. I repeated my name, mentioning Jenna's again, attempting to weave a thread of reality into the fabric of his delusions. But the words that usually had the power to comfort and reassure seemed to dissipate before they could reach him. In an instant, everything about Harold changed. The confusion that had veiled his gaze gave way to a fierce, unfathomable anger. It was like a switch had been flipped, and in that moment, I knew he was about to lash out, maybe trying to figure out if I was just another figment of his troubled mind. With no time to waste and my instincts screaming at me to move, I made a split-second decision. Just as Harold raised the knife, signaling his intent, I bolted for the door, sprinting outside into the safety of the night. I fled the house, my breaths coming in ragged gasps as I dialed Jenna's number with trembling fingers. The night air was cold against my skin, but the terror that gripped me was colder still. Jenna's voice, when she finally answered, was filled with disbelief and concern. She implored me to wait for her, but I couldn't shake the image of Harold's enraged expression and the knife in his hand. When Jenna arrived, the scene she encountered must have painted a very different picture from the chaos I had fled. Harold, seemingly peaceful now, was found asleep in his bed. A stark contrast to the turmoil just moments before. She was at a loss, torn between her duty to her uncle and the reality of the danger I had faced. In the end, I chose to leave that night behind me, vowing never to return. The memory of Harold's twisted face haunted me for many nights to come, a chilling reminder of the unpredictability of the human mind and the shadows that lurk within it. The chilling thought of what if gnawed at me, the realization of how narrowly I had escaped a potentially tragic fate.